Some of the topics I'll cover about malaria is the history of malaria, the cause of malaria, treatment and medications, endemic regions, impact of malaria, and facts about malaria. Malaria is the deadliest parasitic disease on the planet. Malaria is also one of the oldest diseases. There are fossils of the malaria vector that outdate any written history. Ancient Chinese medical writings describe the symptoms of malaria. Malaria became widely recognized in Greece by the 4th century BCE, and it is responsible for the decline of many of the city-state populations. A number of Roman writers attributed malaria diseases to the swamps. There was even 52 remedies found in the Mwangi tomb. Throughout history, malaria has infected and killed many people. King Tut, Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, Dante, Lord Byron were all killed by malaria. Even some of our own great historical figures such as George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and many others were infected with malaria. The discovery of the malaria parasite was credited to Charles Louis Alphonse Lavarin, a French army surgeon stationed in Constantine, Algeria. He was the first to notice the parasite in the blood of a patient suffering from malaria. This occurred on the 6th of November, 1880. For his discovery, Lavarin was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1907. On August 20th, 1897, Ronald Ross, a British officer in the Indian Medical Service, was the first to demonstrate that the malaria parasite could be transmitted from infected patients to mosquitoes. In further work with bird malaria, Ross showed that mosquitoes could transmit malaria parasites from bird to bird. This necessitated a sporogonic cycle. For this discovery, Ross was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1902. Plasmodia can infect species other than humans with malaria. Here we will focus on humans as the host. A person becomes infected with malaria by a mosquito bite only after the mosquito has contracted the malaria parasite from a different host, because plasmodia cannot be passed from generation to generation through reproduction. Worldwide, there are approximately 3,500 species of mosquitoes, but only 30 to 40 species are responsible for transmitting malaria. They are known as the female Anopheles mosquito. The female mosquito does not feed on blood all of the time, only when she becomes pregnant and needs to nourish her eggs. Mosquitoes that are capable of spreading malaria are found all over the world with the exception of Antarctica. They are distinctly identified by the 45-degree angle in their posture while feeding and at rest. The life cycle of the malaria parasite starts out as a sporiocyte inside the vector's saliva gland. When the vector bites a human, it injects its saliva into the site. The saliva of a mosquito is an anticoagulant. When the vector injects its saliva into the site, it also introduces the parasite to the victim. The sporiocyte tunnels its way to the bloodstream, setting its course on the liver. Once arriving at the liver, it burrows inside of the liver cell. Every sporiocyte that makes its way into a liver cell will grow, mature, and produce thousands of haploid forms called merozytes. Over a 5 to 6 day period, the merozytes divide and divide until the cell cannot withhold any more and lyses. When the cell lyses, it reintroduces thousands of parasites back into the bloodstream. Once in the bloodstream, the host's immune system responds to their presence and attacks the invaders. In order to escape this attack, the merozytes force their way into the red blood cells. The invaders that are destroyed by the host leave behind toxic debris. Once inside the red blood cells, the parasites begin to reproduce asexually until once again the cell lyses. This process of invading red blood cells and reproducing repeats for several days. The immense numbers of infected cells gives off a large amount of toxins. Along with the toxins from the destroyed parasites, they induce severe fever and ill-like symptoms. Some of the parasites will undergo another change inside of the red blood cells. They will develop into male and female gameocytes. At this point, the parasite is ready to be ingested back into the female's mosquito, where it will rupture out of the red blood cell and develop into a gamete. A gamete is a mature sex cell. Once a male and female gamete form a diploid zygote, they will develop into okinetes that burrow into the gut of the mosquito and form an oocyst. Malaria can be a severe, potentially fatal disease, and treatment should be initiated as soon as possible. Most drugs used in treatment are active against the parasite forms in the blood and include the ones seen on the screen. In addition, primaquine is active against the dormant parasite liver forms and prevents relapses. The type of treatment a patient receives depends on the type of species of infecting parasite, the area where the infection was acquired and its drug-resistant status, the clinical status of the patient, any accompanying illness or conditions, pregnancy, drug allergies, and other medications taken by the patient. Elimination of malaria in the United States. The National Malaria Eradication Program, a cooperative undertaking by state and local health agencies of 13 southern states and the CDC, originally proposed by Louis Laval Williams, commenced operations on July 1, 1947. By the end of 1949, over 4,650,000 house spray applications have been made. In 1947, 15,000 malaria cases were reported. By 1950, only 2,000 cases were reported, and by 1951, malaria was considered eliminated from the United States. This is a map that depicts the areas where malaria is still very active. As you can tell, it's mainly in Africa. In 2010, 91% of deaths caused by malaria occurred in Africa, 6% in the Southeast Asian region, and 3% in the Eastern Mediterranean region. Of all the malaria-caused deaths this year, 86% were children. 41% of the world's population still lives in malaria-infected areas. That's 3.3 billion people who are at risk each day. The majority of all mosquito bites take place between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. while you're asleep. What this means is that by sleeping under bed nets, you can prevent contact with mosquitoes, therefore preventing the transmission of malaria.